Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Social Contract, a Commander podcast. I'm Mike Almond, and joining me is my co-host, Alex Lapp. Alex, what's up, man?
Well, not too much, Mike. We just have a special episode today. This will be a brief one. Because we have a update from the Rules Committee, the July 2021 update.
Right. We're actually in the middle. It's kind of a weird timing where we're in between set review as far as our... the D&D, the Forgotten Realms, the main set, and we're going to do all of the Commander review a little bit later this week. But, I mean, when breaking news hits, Alex, they don't ban cards very often.
No, they really don't, Mike. The last one was, of course, Lutri. That was back in, I think, April of 2020, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and
it was banned.
And that was kind of a... Yeah. That was a weird case because they banned it before it was even released in Commander.
They banned it the day it was previewed, spoiled.
Basically. Yeah. And I get why, because it basically breaks the format of Commander.
Right.
Like, Companion was its own mess by itself, but that card in particular, well, this just goes in every Izzet deck.
Yeah.
It goes in every deck.
That was the problem.
Yeah, exactly. This is different.
Yeah, I'd like to start us off just by making sure that we get the whole announcement in here. We have 2 new additions to the Commander Advisory Group, but what is that? The Commander Advisory Group is a non-voting body staffed by community members that are selected by the Rules Committee, who is the governing voting body of the game of Commander, the game we all know and love. And on occasion, they will add new members to that board, and these people will advise the Rules Committee on a wide variety of different voices, different opinions, different play styles, different communities, different metas, just to get a bigger picture in. And 2 new people were added today, and that is Kristen Gregory and Elizabeth Rice. And Kristen Gregory is a writer for Commander's Hero, which is one of our websites at EDH so shout out to Kristen there. And congratulations to them both. I'm sure that they will do us proud on the Commander Advisory Group. Another much more minor note, as I said in my brief AFR review episode, as promised, dungeons will work properly, and they have generalized the case to change the Commander Rule 11 so that it reads, parts of abilities which bring other traditional cards you own from outside of the game, such as Living Witch, Spawn Sire of Ulamog, Karn the Great Creator, do not function in Commander, traditional being the operative word there, because now dungeons, which are...
non-traditional.
They're not traditional. They're tokens... But
I guess.
Yeah, they're tokens, but they have to be defined in the rules because the token isn't described. I mean, we didn't really go over it in the AFR review because it's not really relevant. But
not yet.
Yeah, people who have been watching the AFR spoilers know that dungeons are a part of a new keyword venturing into the dungeon. And since those dungeon tokens start outside of the game, there was some concern as to whether those would be legal in EDH or whether it would just have no effect. And surprised they do work, as they said they would. But that's not really why we came together to talk about this episode, Mike.
Yeah,
and
thank you very much for... Yeah, go ahead.
Hullbreacher's banned, Mike.
Here's the thing. I don't know how to feel.
Okay, well, let's read Hullbreacher first. And then we'll talk about how we feel about Hullbreacher.
Sure, fine.
For anyone who doesn't know, which, how could you? Hullbreacher, 2 and a blue for a creature Merfolk Pirate. It's a 3/2 with Flash. If an opponent would draw a card except the first one they draw in each of their draw steps, instead, you create a treasure token. This came out in Commander Legends.
Mm-hmm.
Right. You're right, Mike. We specifically picked this card out, as did many other Commander players and content creators, as a particularly fine point on the problem of just these absurdly powerful blue, black, and green cards. This was one of them. It's what a backbreaking card. Absolutely devastating. Talk to me about
it. It's an absolute house. It's an absolute house. It takes one of the things that's already very, very powerful in EDH with wheels and cranks it up to 11, even though it might have been up at 11 to begin with.
Now, we've had another wheel-based card banned before, and that's Leovold, Emissary of Trest.
Sure.
Which I don't think we need to read. He's been banned for many years. But
right.
he effectively did this a similar thing where he prevented your opponents from drawing more than one card each turn, which, of course, wheels can take massive advantage of by forcing them to discard their entire hand and not draw anything. Devastating.
Here's where I'm at. So Sheldon Menery did an article recently about wheels.
He did.
And about how, frankly, they're pretty oppressive. They're pretty rampant. Wheelie wheelie good is a phrase for a thing. We didn't coin it. It's pretty widely spread. I'm confused on, I guess, the timeline. Like, it seems weird to me. Lutri getting banned before it was ever really released. Totally get that. Doesn't function. Fine. They don't ban cards very often.
No.
And I don't know if the timing with this coincides and is related, or sorry, I don't know if the timing for this is coincidence. I don't know if it was a preface. I'm confused here. I'm in the, if the cards exist in the game, even as powerful as Hullbreacher is, if you're gonna put it in the game, it's there, fine. So the idea of banning it, what are we, half a year away? A little bit. It's been within a 12-month cycle at the very least, and it's gone now. I don't know. It feels odd to me. What do you think?
Let's see. Hullbreacher came out with Commander Legends, which was released November 20th of 2020.
Okay.
So, yeah, it's been more than 6 months, but not a year.
Right.
As for the timing of the ban, I mean, even as somebody who's working for EDH Rec, I have absolutely no insight, and even if I did, I wouldn't mention anything about the banning process or anything like that. I have no privileged information, so all I can do is speculate and opine, just like Mike.
And if you had privileged information, then it would be privileged, and we can't release that.
And there are people in my circle that do have that privileged information.
Sure,
because I am in a workplace with Commander Advisory Group members, and of course they're very upfront about this. They can't talk about any of this, so all we can do is opine and give what we think is going on. And I just want to give that preface. Not only do we not know what's going on behind the scenes, but the RC and the CAG have a difficult job. They have to keep tens of millions of players happy,
Absolutely.
Which is impossible. So that said, let's now complain.
I was going to say, this is much more, for me, it's much less of a, like, do you know why they call it wine?
No, why do they call it wine?
Because you make it with sour grapes. And I'm not trying to do either of those
That's
things.
That's very good.
I came up with that today because I was excited.
You came up with that today?
This recording. I did. I it's one of those things where, much like Wheelie Wheelie Good, it may be a phrase that somebody else has used before, but I went, I'm going to do this.
Right.
And if that actually exists,
whining doesn't always have to do with sour grapes, but that is one appropriate that is quite good.
So it's one of those things where I don't want to complain about it, because it's one of those things where I feel like at a certain point Wizards gets to go, well, we're damned if we do and we're damned if we don't then. This card was something that we made. It came out. People hated it, or a lot of people hated it because it was too powerful. So we took it out of the game and now people are mad at us. That's not what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to understand the thought process.
Okay.
And part of it Go ahead.
Well,
let's lead into it.
Let's do what we can to look into this thought process, and let's start with reading the statement. This will give us a little bit of insight, assuming that they're as honest as they can be and as forthright as they can be. And then after that, we'll talk a little bit about the RC's ban philosophy, which we have talked about before, but a lot of people probably aren't familiar with. So let's read it here. Hullbreacher has been a problem card since its release. Its ostensible defensive use against extra card draw has been dwarfed by offensively combining it with mass draw effects to easily strip players' hands while accelerating the controller. And this much we know. The problem with wheels isn't that they're wheels. I mean, wheels are kind of annoying.
This is not a preventative card.
The problem with wheels is that wheels have payoffs, and those payoffs are really good. Really, really good. Back to the quote here. That play pattern isn't something we want prevalent in casual play. See the Leovold ban, which we mentioned.
Sure.
And we have seen a lot of evidence that it is too tempting even there, as it combines with wheels and other popular casual staples. The case against the card was overwhelming. There remain a few similar cards that are still permitted, notably Notion Thief and Narset Parter of Veils. The additional hoops required, such as an additional color pip for Notion Thief and sorcery speed for Narset, oh boy, appear to be keeping them to the appropriate level of play, though we'll continue to keep an eye on them. And that statement is directly from the Rules Committee. So, before I delve into what I think, Mike, what do you have to say about that?
As far as a overarching statement, as far as generalization, I'm with it.
Okay.
I heard your eyes roll when you were talking about Narset being more balanced because of sorcery speed, and I get it too. Trust me.
No, I wasn't rolling my eyes at the Narset, but I'll let you finish. Well, we'll talk about that. Don't worry.
Yeah, everything contained in that statement, I at least get the premise of. Wizards does a lot of work on the games that they provide, and with Magic the Gathering, they are also very, very conscious of how they're going to present this is why we did this. Because, frankly, it's a game that a lot of people play.
Well, again,
and
we want to be clear. The Rules Committee and Wizards of the Coast are separate bodies. The Rules Committee does have a Wizards of the Coast employee on it, but the other 4 members are not Wizards employees. And they're not on the payroll of Wizards. They do obviously have a close working relationship out of necessity, but they are not one and the same.
Thank you for the clarification.
Okay, so let's talk about the part that you could hear me roll my eyes at, and how that ties into what the Rules Committee calls their signpost banning philosophy, and what I affectionately call the crucifixion philosophy. And basically how this goes is that the Rules Committee has specific priorities when it comes to the ban list. They want to have a small ban list with few number of cards on it, and they don't want to change it very often. And we can see this in practice. Very few cards are banned relative to how many cards are legal in the format. And Mike noted at the start of this episode, you're right. Bans are very, very, very rare. Having 2 bans inside of 1 year. This wasn't 1 year. It was a year and a couple of months. A year and 4 months. That's still very. That's more bans than average for the Rules Committee.
Right.
So yeah, we can see that in practice, and the signpost style of banning that they've done is different from all other formats banned and restricted lists, all of which that are sanctioned formats at least are managed by Wizards of the Coast, and they make their decisions on there. Now, Wizards and the Rules Committee have separate philosophies, and so we're only going to be talking about how the Rules Committee bans cards here. When the Rules Committee bans a card, they are doing it by their own description to discourage similar cards from being played. That card may be a big offender of whatever strategy, playstyle, in this case, wheeling people's hands out and making them play Hellbent. But as they noted, there are other cards that are very similar to this. Leovold was one of them. That one is also banned. But there's also Notion Thief and Narset Parter of Veils. And you'll notice that even though they provided explanations for why they didn't feel the need to ban Notion Thief or Narset Parter of Veils or many of the other cards that are extremely similar to many of the cards that are on the ban list, like Necropotence, which is not banned, and Yawgmoth's Bargain, which is banned. Two very similar cards. The reason why is because of this signpost idea. The rules committee feels that they can ban individual cards, and this sort of bans by association all of the cards around them. Now, I'm gonna have Mike respond to that first, because we have talked about this before and I don't want to go off on a tangent. But suffice to say, when I have my turn to talk, I don't agree with this strategy. Mike, how do you feel about it?
I think you ban cards because they break the format or they're bad for the format. I don't love the idea of... It feels, in the kindest way that I can put it, it feels like a cop-out. Because the other thing that they also talk about is like, hey, the rule 0 of Magic is discuss it at the table and figure it out. Like, you don't just have to follow
Which
the
is
line.
fair. That's one of the parts that is good
right,
about our format.
But you can't say the rule is discuss it with your play group. Also, we're going to make examples of cards because it's a suggestion at the same time. And that seems wrong to me. But at the same time, and shout out to the EDH Recast, because in a recent episode, hi everybody, hi. They brought up a really good point towards the beginning of one of their episodes, where last year there were more new cards than there were all Magic cards in the first 3 years of Magic.
Fascinating.
And with this set release, with Forgotten Realms set release, we're going to have more new cards now this year than we did all of last year. So when you're bringing in that many new cards, I get the idea of sometimes something is going to get banned because there's just more stuff. And as you're adding more and more pieces to this Jenga tower, well, it's going to make it easier for other things to collapse. So, okay, great.
Right.
The idea of doing that because you're trying to send a message instead of trying to keep the tower standing, that feels a little lost on me.
Okay. Yeah, I feel similarly to you, Mike. Now, I think the main issue isn't necessarily that the signpost ban strategy is a bad idea on the face of it.
Sure.
I think that if EDH was the only format, and there were no other, I mean, there were just offshoots of EDH like Brawl and stuff like that, then
you wouldn't have to worry about
the signpost ban list style philosophy would be a little bit less unintuitive. Now, I saw a post on the EDH subreddit recently, and it was somebody who had been playing the game of EDH for several years, and they were bemoaning that this is funny, this was before the ban announcement, incidentally, but they were bemoaning that only just now had they even heard of the signpost ban philosophy by the RC. And I think that, I mean, Mike, I don't want to speak for you, but I believe that it was only within the past year or two that you became aware of the RC or the CIG or something like that. And maybe you can correct me on this.
No, it was around the time that we started recording the podcast.
Right.
I couldn't tell you exactly if I became aware of it because I was doing the research needed to start the podcast, or after like episode 2, I went, oh, I should know how some of this works. Alex, please explain to me.
Right.
And then we went into it. Right. But it's fairly new to me as well.
Okay. And I think that's not at all you're not unique in that at all, I don't think. I think that a lot of EDH players, especially ones that don't regularly consume ancillary content like our podcast and other people's podcasts and YouTube videos like the Command Zone and reading subreddits and things like that. There are a lot of people that just don't engage in that at all. They play at their kitchen table or they play at their LGS. And those people, whether or not they know about the RC, I think would be well within their rights to reasonably assume that when a card is banned in EDH, it functions like every other banned card in every other format. For example, like when Oko got banned last year. Oko didn't get banned because Oko represents a bad strategy and cards that are similar to him shouldn't be played. Oko got banned because specifically Oko itself was the problem. And everybody who is playing those formats understands that. They're like, okay, we can't play Oko, but we're going to play, strategies that are like that but aren't quite as good just because that piece of it is gone. And I think that mentality is going to translate right over. When Hullbreacher is banned, people aren't going to say, oh, well, I guess I shouldn't play Notion Thief, Narset, Opposition Agent, any of those cards.
Now it's a replacement. Right. Now I have more incentive to play those other cards.
They're going to be like,
well,
Hullbreacher's banned, so I'm going to use the next best thing. And of course, they're well within their rights to do that. But I think that it's on paper, the signpost ban philosophy is not completely without merit. However, in the dirty, grimy, real world where you have many millions of players all playing the game, those players need rules. Games need rules.
Sure.
And when a card is banned, the way that most people are going to understand it is this card is banned and other cards aren't. And if you mean it in another way than that, then I think that message, what I'm saying is I think that message is going to get lost. And I think that even among people who know that the signpost ban philosophy is a thing that people either disregarded out of not caring or out of even spite for the RC, because the RC has a lot of bad blood from the community just because people get very salty about this kind of thing. But how do you feel, Mike?
Well, to your point exactly, we are both aware of it. We're aware of the message and the premise on how they ban cards and how they decide to ban cards. We've also done an episode on these are the cards that we would like to see come back. These are the cards that, we would suggest, hey, maybe we look into banning this. So if we have that premise and we understand the intent on how they ban cards, think about that for the people that don't.
Right.
And here's the thing. Spoiler alert, am I glad, like, if you put all of this in a vacuum, you don't take the timing, you don't take the message, you don't have anything there. If you just asked me, hey, Hullbreacher is a card that we have. We're thinking about is it something that we put out into the world and we let it be, or do we not release this card? I would be on no, I don't think this card should be a thing side. So part of me is happy about this.
Right.
I don't like this card being a thing. And I'm looking at EDH Rec. Do you know that even in the entirety of all blue decks, this is one of like the top 25, 30 cards, even though it's only been a thing for about 7 months, 8 months.
Considering how expensive this card is and how mean it is, to see it
it's not in
popular.
It's not in pre-cons, it's literally in one set. It's never been reprinted, and it's in 8% of all decks. It's in more decks than Archaeomancer. It's in more decks.
Wow.
It's just behind Labman and Dig Through Time.
Okay. Well, those are both extremely popular staples.
Right. It's just behind those cards that have been around for a minute.
Yeah.
And, this is one of those times where they're banning a card, when they banned Paradox Engine. I don't know how many decks Paradox Engine was in.
In my deck.
But I assume it was in a lot, because it is a win con. It's a colorless artifact win con.
Yeah.
It had been around a lot longer than Hullbreacher had.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it's good, and this is just my premise. I think it's good that this card is not legal in our format. I think the way that we got there is problematic. And I think the way that it signs... I would rather have this been like Lutri. If we're going to get to this point, don't wait until it's in 23,000 decks on EDHREC.
Right.
And 6 months later, 7 months later, 8 months later, talk about, okay, we're going to remove this because instead of it being used this way, it's been used in a much more aggressive way. And there's other cards like it that have that have more restrictions. So we're going to take this one away. Well, you can forecast that. You can see how many people play Narset. We can see how many people play these other cards. We have the previous ban from a card that did something like this. So if we have all of this information, and then this card comes out, it's either there or not, as far as I'm concerned.
So what you're saying is that the RC should have known better and acted sooner.
I'm saying people make mistakes. Don't frame it as... people are using this and we don't like the way they're using it and there's other cards. Don't any of that. Either say, hey, this is a card that is destructive and it shouldn't have been a thing in the first place. And we're going to try and, make sure that that's something we are more prominently aware of at the forefront from now on. Or outright say, hey, we've gotten a lot of feedback. And I think that's part of it. This card breaks games at 3 mana with Flash. And if that's the case, and it's, hey, there's a lot of stuff that we couldn't have foreseen, and now that it's there, it has to go away. Don't make it about the theme of what the card does. Make it about the card. Hullbreacher is messed up. Do I think that we need to ban Narset Parter of Veils? No. It's been around forever. It's fine. It's annoying. It's something that you can target, etc., etc., etc. I get why Hullbreacher, in a vacuum, Hullbreacher should be removed, or could be removed, versus Narset. But don't make it about the theme on everything if the problem is the card itself. If Hullbreacher is the problem, Hullbreacher is a problem. Admit that it's a problem. Get it out of there.
Yeah, I think it's definitely an issue of when you're a hammer, all your problems look like nails. The RC has this philosophy, and... it seems to me that for better or for worse, that every ban is going to fit within that philosophy. And if it doesn't fit, they're going to make it fit. And I think it sounds to me that part of it is what's not sitting right with you.
Mostly. And in all of that aside, I literally said I didn't want to be sour grapes and whine about it, but here we are. All of that, keeping all of that in mind. First of all, if anybody who's listening to this thinks, then I'm going to let those people know, give them a piece of my mind. First of all, don't do that. No. If you're talking about people on the CAG, like the new entries also announced with this, they're not involved. They might have done some advising on this, but it was probably a discussion. Again, I don't know, but decisions aren't made.
Well, let's be very clear. Even if there was a single CAG member that we specifically knew was specifically the impetus for banning this card, that still would not be merit for nasty comments towards them. The Rules Committee and the CAG, as I said earlier, have the impossible job. And they're doing the best that they can with good intentions, and that's not always going to sit well with everybody, but it's very important that we treat them with respect and not send them death threats when they ban or don't ban a particular card. And I should hope that none of our listeners would ever do anything like that, but you never know.
No, our listeners are nice people.
Yes.
You hear that? If you're listening to this, you better be a nice person. Otherwise, you'll make me sad. The other part of that is, I also 100% admit, we have a podcast that is designed to talk about EDH. Sometimes that means we talk about the Rules Committee. Sometimes that means we talk about ban cards, we talk about cards they should unban, etc., etc., etc. That is not a job I feel like I am pretty good at evaluating my strengths and weaknesses.
Mm-hmm.
That is not a job I could do. I don't think I would be a good functional member of the rules committee and everything that they have to do. So when I come across as somebody who is critiquing a decision that they are making, it is not because I feel that there is any superiority. It is just from my standpoint. I wish that they had talked about why this was happening a little bit differently.
Right.
I wish that a decision was either made right off the bat or that they just went away. But I get it. I mean, it's in 23,000 decks already. Like, I get it.
23,000 decks.
I get it. But it's weird. You know, it's just weird.
Yeah, I mean, we can talk briefly about this conspiracy theory angle to it, where, as you mentioned, Sheldon, who regularly writes articles about the state of the game and cards that he feels are notable and cards that he feels are problems. And as you said, he recently wrote an article talking about wheels, but in that article he also said that he was not forecasting.
No.
So
it's less about conspiracy theory timing as just like just right after the article thing. That I think is more coincidental. Mm-hmm. Like I'm willing to totally waive that. We are in the middle of like, okay, this set has been the Forgotten Realms set is spoiled and the pre-release has happened, but now the release is happening and the commander decks that are coming and all this cool stuff. It's like, oh, by the way, on Monday, kind of in the middle of it all, this thing that came out like 8 months ago, yeah, it does suck. You're right.
To be fair, it would be very difficult for them to schedule a ban announcement at a time where spoilers are not happening, about to happen, or have just finished happening.
Yeah.
Because we're now in the midst of 24/7, 365 spoiler season, the likes of which we've never seen.
I did realize that I had said that literally like 20 minutes after I had talked about the fact that there are going to be more new cards now than there were last year, than there were.
Like, I'm glad they announced it now instead of 3 or 4 years from now, because Paradox Engine, as you're right, that got banned 4 years after it came out. And I think that a lot of people weren't happy about that. I wasn't happy about it. And then Iona came out, what was it, like 13 years before she got banned?
Something like that. It was a ridiculous amount of time.
It took a very long time for Iona to get banned. And I think from a wider gaze, from 30,000 feet, I mean, it doesn't feel great that they took this long, but I don't know. It's not the kind of card that you or I would play with.
No, and that's actually what that was the one like piece of unknown information that I want to know, because I think it would be really, really illuminating. Is this something that was similar to Flash, where, hey, this isn't a card that you or I play a lot because it is a certain power level, it is in a certain type of deck. Okay, we don't play that. So is this something where we didn't play Flash because it's basically a CEDH card almost exclusively, and it is a problematic card in CEDH, so eventually, hey, this is something where we're going to remove it because this is a big deal to that community. Is Hullbreacher one of those cards because it is so powerful, because it has Flash, because it's 3 mana, and it has a ridiculous effect? Is it something where it was a big outcry in that community? Is it something where it was just overall? Is it something... I don't know if it was a feedback thing. I'm just curious of where did the intent come from?
Right. And I think that as the rules committee and the commander advisor group expand, the commander advisor group now is in excess of 10 members. I believe. I don't know exactly how many people are on there, but they've demonstrated that they intend to continue to grow the advisory group. And I think that that's a good idea, because I think that a lot of this feedback is not just coming from the gaping maw of millions of screaming EDH players. And I think that's why we have the CAG, is because, yes, we do need a wide variety of voices, but most voices that are going to be making advice don't have the kind of experience and the kind of insight that would allow them to craft solutions. Players are very, very good at noticing when there's a problem in a game. They're very, very bad at recommending the correct solution to that problem.
Sure. I think it is a lot easier to institute Rule Zero at the table than it is at the card development side and at the, rules committee side and everything along those lines. I get where there is an absolute discourse, and I mean, heck, if we sit down at a table, and I'm actually looking forward to doing that with you in the near future here, I totally understand the thought of seeing somebody play a card on the other side of the table and going, wait, you're playing that? I trusted you. Like, I get this kind of thing. I don't envy any of the position that both the CAG and the Rules Committee are in. I wish this had been different, but I'm not even in a position where I'm like, hey, you need to do better. I am more in a position where I would have preferred it one way, but honestly, I think I'm tempered by being as happy with the result as I am with the confusion I have at it happening in the first place. Right. You know what I mean?
I think that as an end cap on this, I feel positively about this ban. I'm glad that it's banned. Mm-hmm. Now, obviously, I wish that it had never existed, but this is a close second. Sure. And it sounds like that you feel quite similarly to me here. But there have been a lot of extreme reactions, even in just the past few hours, because we're recording this on the same day that the announcement was made. Mm-hmm. I've heard people frothing at the mouth. I've heard people just saying terrible, terrible things.
Go to the Reddit announcement and just look through the comments. And everybody, I understand, we're very passionate about this game because we like it. We love it. I get it. You gotta calm down, everybody. It can't get to a point where you're love something so much that you hate everything that doesn't go your way in it. And the whole point of this game is to have fun. The Rules Committee saw this as a card that eliminated a lot of the potential to have fun. Agree or disagree with it, I totally understand. But that's why you have Rule Zero at your table. That's why you're able to have these conversations, everything along those lines. Alex, if people want to ask about this or any other cards or anything about the set that we're literally in the middle of reviewing, where would they find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Lappermedic, LAPPERMEDIC. You can ask me rules questions. You can just hit me up to chat, anything you like. And if you want to talk to me in private, alex@edhrec.com is my email.
This is where we would normally talk about how we have a link to TCG Player as an affiliate where you can buy all the cards that we talked about in this episode. Don't buy Hullbreacher. Don't buy that because it's illegal. And it's definitely at a discount now, but it's also pretty useless. But if you want to buy any fun cards that are legal, you can go to bit.ly/EDH_social, and we'll make sure that we put that link in the show notes for you as well. We have a Discord link in our show notes as well, where you can come and talk to Alex and myself and other members of the community, talk about the upcoming sets. We can talk about cards that a lot of people don't know about that. Heck, we talk about some of those cards on the actual podcast itself because I like fun cards. I like silly cards. I got to use Ice Cave recently.
Did you?
Yes, I did. And man, the eyes that went up. And I said, yeah, this is in like less than 100 decks.
We should get some of our friends back on here and talk to them again.
We should.
It's been a while.
We can do that. Absolutely. We need to talk to some people that like Magic as much as we do. And with that, you can also go ahead and follow us on Twitter at EDH_social. Email us at thesocialcontractedh@gmail.com. I'm looking forward to talking to you again very soon about the commander set for the D&D, all of it, because, woo, I got some takes. I like some of this stuff a lot. We'll talk to you soon.